Matoka. I am half Navajo, half Inupiaq Eskimo. I was born and raised in New Mexico and moved out to Georgia back in 2008. Navajo culture is living in a way that is more spiritual. We do have and appreciate modern medicine, but a lot of our lives are lived more remotely, so having access to that isn't always easier. Our culture is very family oriented. It's a matriarch society, which is not common even within the Native American tribes. So the matriarch society is where the women make a majority of the decisions. And when it comes to a whole family unit, you'll have the matriarch, and then you have the family members below it. So the matriarch makes a majority of, they'll handle disputes, they'll handle any type of questions that people have. If anything needs to be done for the family, they typically will arrange it for them. So within our family, the matriarch was my grandma Mary Dea, which she passed away, and then the person that took over after that was my Auntie Ann. We were naturally hunter-gatherers. We grew our own food. We didn't eat a lot of processed stuff. And then when we were forced onto reservations, we were given food that we didn't grow. We were given meat that we didn't hunt for. And a lot of times we were sent to areas where we were not acclimated for. A lot of the issues that we have now, I think, are because our bodies have not had a lot of time processing foods that have more preservatives. I mean, we ate more natural foods. We ate a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables that we grew ourselves. So now I think our bodies are trying to figure out how to handle all of this. And as far as illness, I think we were culturally, it's more acceptable to see a medicine man than it is to go to the hospital. Our healthcare system is run by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Indian Health Services. Our healthcare is difficult to navigate, and it's not something that I didn't grow up enjoying. I mean, nobody enjoys going to the hospital, but we would have to schedule appointments, months away, even if it was for something that needed immediate attention. Medications don't typically aren't designed to work with us, meaning when they do their testing with prescription medication, we're not typically part of the pool. So we're essentially given medications and just kind of rolling the dice and seeing, we don't know how it's going to affect you. So if you could just tell us the problems that you have, we'll go from there. So a lot of Native Americans are hesitant to seek health care. It's kind of like Christianity, you're doing good things, bad things won't happen to you.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing with Native Americans, where if you're not, it's called walking in beauty. So if you're not walking in beauty, outside sources have a way to get in through the cracks to start affecting your health, to start affecting your mindset, to affect your family, to affect your crops, your livestock. So you have to walk in beauty. The first thought that people have when they get sick is to see a medicine man. They might not know what the illness is, but the symptoms, there are certain ceremonies, certain herbs, certain songs that are sung. How long a ceremony will go will all depend on symptoms. Diabetes is a big problem. Um, I think diabetes is the biggest thing that our family deals with. And it's, again, I think part of it is not being educated on how to live healthy. And we are about 30 miles from the highway. And within the last 10 years, it was finally paved. But before that, it was all dirt road. And then about 60 miles from a town that has a Walmart. My family we still butcher. We have our own livestock, and there'll be certain times where they're celebrating something, or it's just time to butcher more meat, and lamb is big for us. So the ability to get fresh produce, unless you grow it, is extremely difficult. And then even growing it is hard because we don't have access to water. The biggest beliefs within the Navajo, especially, is if somebody passes away inside the house, you can no longer use that house.
So what do you do with the house?
It just gets boarded up,
Okay.
and it's just not used anymore. Our homes are built in a way where our doors should always face the east, so we welcome the day.
Mm-hmm.
When a person passes, we believe that when they pass, we have 4 days of mourning, but they have to be buried within 4 days. And then after that 4th day, we shouldn't cry for them. We shouldn't continue the mourning, because their spirit is in the spirit world, and they have to be able to go and move on.
Okay.
But if we're crying and we're holding on to the memory of them too tightly, they don't want to leave. They get confused. So then they get stuck, kind of like purgatory. Within a 60-mile radius, you have one clinic, and you have a bad experience there, and that's the only clinic that is convenient for you, and that's your only option. After so many bad experiences, and having had, if you have a very declined health situation, but you've had so many bad experiences at a clinic, that I'm just not going to go. I'm just going to deal with this pain. Our health care is provided by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Bureau of Indian Affairs is government run. It's associated with the U.S. government. Even when we have a complaint, there's so many levels that it has to go to get to anybody that could even make any type of decision on improvement.
Right.
So I feel like, people have this concept of like free healthcare. It's such a great thing, but it's not. Our ability to be able to choose any hospital that we go to and have access to specialized care, for my personal experience, far outweighs free healthcare.
Right.
Free healthcare gets messy. How death affects us. We're very, sometimes people think, this person passed away. Why aren't you more upset? It's because we have to let them go on. We have to let their spirit move on. When I had issues leaving the Indian hospital, I'm allergic to aspirin, ibuprofen, and penicillin, and doctors wouldn't even look at the chart. They say, okay, you're having pain, so why don't you take some ibuprofen, and then we'll schedule a follow-up. And then, again, 6 months out. Oh, but I'm allergic to that. Okay, then take some aspirin. I'm allergic to that. then take some Tylenol. You know, like just whatever. Just we need you to leave kind of a feeling. So it never felt very personal. We had doctors that came into the hospital, and I wouldn't see the same doctor twice in a row.
So nobody ever stayed. Mm-hmm. It was like a rotating door.
Yes.
You couldn't like build a
relationship. I had a great office manager that was like, "You have insurance." Mm-hmm. I don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. And so she sat down with me and she got out this book and she was showing me, these are the places that you can go to see a doctor. These are the places you can go to do this. You have access to physical therapy and to mental health services and to this. And you complain that your back hurts, you can go see a chiropractor. And I was just like, I still don't know what that means. You know, it wasn't something that was just part of our life. And, and she laughed at me when I said, well, I go to the Indian hospital because that's where I'm supposed to go. She's like, you don't have to go there. And I said, I'm allowed to see other doctors? Like, I'm allowed to go to other places aside from the Indian hospital? And she laughed and she's like, yeah. I said, I didn't know that. The Europeans started settling. The way that they would try to get rid of the Native Americans that were living in that area is they gave them blankets that were infected with smallpox, because we had zero immunity to it. We had never, there are diseases and things that we had never experienced in all of our culture. So our bodies had zero ways of even knowing what to do with these diseases. And I think that's why COVID was, it really impacted the Native American community to a degree that is so astronomically different. My family's huge advocates for getting vaccinated from it because it did come through and it just was like a wildfire. Mm-hmm. It came through multiple times. Like we were hit with wave after wave after wave, and living in a multi-generational home, it hit a home, and it's so crazy that whole multiple generations of people died. They don't exist anymore, you know, and it's just mind-boggling. But there are really no statistics out there to show the impact that it had on Native Americans. And I think the more that outside voices advocate for us, like people who have, like Mark Ruffalo, he's an actor, he was huge at voicing things during the pandemic for the Native American communities. So that was helpful. And I think people like that, Leonardo DiCaprio, he was a big voice for Canadian Aboriginals and then North American Aboriginals. He's been a big voice for us to try to get like more people aware, mm-hmm. and just helping to give us a voice that we just don't have. Right. We're not aggressive or persistent. You know, we're not naggers. We're not like, and I say this as we as a people, mm-hmm. I am. But culturally, it's difficult for us to say there's a problem because we don't want there to be a problem. Right. We don't, because in our mind, the problem isn't the issue, it's us.
One of the most interesting points I thought Aurora brought up in her interview was the fact that the Navajo are very family oriented and that they are one of the very few Native American cultures that have a matriarchal society. The matriarch is the head of that particular family unit and is responsible for making decisions and answering questions involving the family. This is extremely important to note in the healthcare setting, and as nurses, we need to be culturally competent in regards to who we address when we're discussing health and medical information, or when we're answering questions about the health status of a family member. We need to be aware the matriarch is the one who will be making the decisions. Also, Aurora discussed the Navajo's belief on death and mourning. As nurses, we need to be aware of how certain cultures view death in order to provide the correct postmortem care. In the case of the Navajo community, they do not want to spend a lot of time with the body and will not be seen holding or touching their loved one's body, as we might see in some other cultures. Their mourning period does not extend past the fourth day. And as nurses, we need to be aware of this, so not as to make the mistake of thinking that they are having difficulty coping or grieving. And in actuality, they're just following their culture's beliefs and practices regarding death and mourning.
The interview with Aurora was really enlightening. She explained that among the Native American population that diabetes is very prevalent. When they were forced onto the reservations, the way that they ate was totally opposite from what they were accustomed to. They were hunters and gatherers, meaning that they grew their own fruit, grew their own foods, fresh vegetables, hunted for fresh meats. However, now they were subjected to eating processed foods and a lot of preservatives, and it was very bad for their body, and they couldn't really adjust to that type of diet. So as nurses, we should be non-judgmental when speaking with people from different cultures, in this case, Native Americans, because they were put into situations that they didn't have a choice. So we should search out resources that can help them and educate them on ways that they can be healthier.
So one of the main things that I pulled from doing this project and this interview with Aurora was that many people who had to use the Native American healthcare system have a lot of mistrust in modern medicine and the American healthcare system, simply because of past experiences and past trauma. So as nurses, we need to realize the injustices that have happened to Native Americans in just the past 100 years. So by meeting these patients with that realization, we need to create that trust and that rapport with our patients of all cultures, really. But by doing that, we can make sure that we're asking the right questions, find out how the people in this culture feel about birth, their general wellness, and death. Don't just assume that because you would do it one way, they should do it that way. By asking questions and being interested and being present for your patients, you can create that trusting relationship that they have never felt before. Many of them have used the Native American health system, and they do have a rotating door of doctors. So creating that rapport with your patients can really help build that trusting relationship.
In doing this project, I have learned that one of the main overlapping issues in modern medicine and the healthcare deficit with Native American Navajo people is health literacy. I understand that, their bodies are not processing, preserved foods and things like that well, but what it comes down to today is health literacy, knowing the right choices to make in a heart healthy diet, knowing the resources that are available to them, knowing what insurance is. She really kept that key idea that the teaching just isn't there. So as a nurse that is culturally competent, I am going to have to prioritize that health literacy assessment and bringing in the interdisciplinary team, like the nutritionist, the caseworker, things like that, to help me in my patient teaching with each of these patients, to help them understand where they can go, what they have access to, and how they can overcome these health issues in their culture and still practice holistic needs.